Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is Monday, which is the day that comes after Sunday, but before Tuesday. Look at that. Math, kind of. Joining me tonight for the first time ever, actually, we will have all three of the minds behind the Legacy of Westeros on screen together. And that is myself, Zach, and Ryan. Zach, off to you first, man. How's it going? This was unexpected.
Pleasure, dude. I know that you and I have just been missing the mark every now and then, either due to scheduling or sickness or what have you. So it's great to be back on the mic and great to be able to do it in such a fashion as we got everybody's schedules, everybody's stars to align. So I'm excited for that. I'm excited that my Rangers are up 2-0 in the American League Championship Series after a thrilling win against Houston. So all around a pretty good day for the Zach Attack.
Yeah, well, the Blue Jays suck, and so do the Titans, and I think the Leafs are currently losing to the Blackhawks. So yeah, sports. Ryan, how about you, man? How's it going?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good. Thanks for letting me play along with you guys. I feel a little starstruck here, talking with two of the titans of Fandom Empire. Feel a privilege to even be on the show with you guys. So, looking forward to doing this. And yeah, man, as a native Illinoisan, I'm not a huge fan of where I'm from, but I do still support the Chicago Blackhawks, and it is exceptionally enjoyable to see that they are putting the beat down on your beloved Toronto Maple Leafs at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, there's no real excuse to lose that game if you're a Leafs fan. So it is what it is. But hey, I'm doing okay in fantasy, so that's something. Lots to talk about tonight. I will apologize ahead of time. I said this when Ryan and I recorded Colleague Nation, our little NASCAR thing we do. I have cut my tongue, so it hurts a little bit to talk. Takes a couple days to heal too. So yeah, it's always something. It feels like these days.
If only you had two people on the show who just love to talk, who could balance it out for you.
That's fantastic, because a lot of these questions tonight, especially the Halloween one, actually, we need some people who aren't the diehards to honestly answer us some Halloween stuff. And if you missed it, in case you've been sleeping, the Halloween drama, if you will, has come to an end, and that is because according to Deadline, that's right, according to Deadline, the title's here somewhere, Miramax lands Halloween TV rights in broad agreement with Trancas, plots cinematic universe. I just did a video over on the Legacy of Halloween where I dive into a little bit about the cinematic universe side of things, and like, I'll be honest, I'll save you. I mean, go check that channel out for sure. Go subscribe to it. All Halloween content there. I just seeing the term cinematic franchise while discussing TV rights and a horror franchise to boot. I think it's way too broad, and I think that they're biting off more than they can chew, personally. This is coming from a Halloween fan. So let me pose the question to the two of you. For me, I prefer to go see horror on the big screen. I don't mind watching it at home. No problem. Like, if I've already seen it once, sure, at home's fine. But, you know, for people that just sort of generally view the Halloween franchise, what do they have to do to make a TV series at all interesting or appealing to either of you to make you tune in? Because, like, obviously the diehards are going to tune in one way or another, but I question if there's much of an appetite from just the general audience here for a Halloween TV series.
It's a loaded question. Ryan, do you have thoughts, or do you want me to lead off?
Well, listen, I'll be the first to admit horror has never been my favorite genre. So I've seen horror. I've actually seen more Halloween movies than I've seen of just about any other franchise. But I guess I'll start with this caveat. It seems like every franchise has to have a universe now. Like that's the growing trend. There's a universe for everything, and I feel like there's just too much capitalization happening with all of these various universes to produce quality over quantity, right? And this is my concern as somebody that only watches horror in very small bits and pieces, is that there is definitely not, at least for me, a huge appetite to watch a cinematic or even 30 minutes every week really of a franchise. I will say this, even though I've only watched about 10 minutes of it, I know Chucky has done quite well with I think they're on season 3 over on USA. I didn't think that was going to last, and they've obviously done a very nice job to get to where they are. So I definitely think there is room in that genre to have a sphere. I guess worry that, as you said, outside of the diehards, you're going to have a very hard time capturing a captivated audience to tune in week over week. And I think one of the things for me that does allure me to the horror genre when I do watch it is the suspense, the what's coming around the next corner, and where is the slash going to come from? Are they jumping out of wherever? And I feel like you're going to struggle to capture that in a weekly episodic situation where sure you can have cliffhangers, but it doesn't quite pack the same punch as you're not going to make me jump out of my skin when I have to wait 7 days to see what's going to happen. So I think it's a risk. I think there's a huge money grab at play, and I don't know the financials behind this deal or where they stand, but I think there's definitely a word of caution to be had that if they put too much money into this, they could backfire significantly, similar to what the Exorcist franchise has fallen into.
Yeah, I think I'll echo a lot of what Ryan says. I was actually going to use Chucky as my example as well. That's pretty much the only successful franchise I can think of that is doing something on a semi seasonal format that fits into the horror thriller genre. And from what I've been able to observe, I haven't watched it a whole lot myself, but from what I've observed from message boards and people that I follow on Facebook who are following along with it, is that there is a bit of charisma to the characterization. And that stems from the creative process. It comes from writing dynamic characters. And so, as strange as it sounds, coming from looking at it from a perspective of being like a horror series, writing isn't really the first thing you think of. You're thinking of the suspense. You're thinking of the guts and the gore. But I think if you're going to capture a new audience and retain said audience, you're going to need some moderately decent writing that is going to build on the world, that's going to build on certain characters, and that allows you to feel like you're a little more immersed in Haddonfield and the surrounding areas than you were previously. I think there's only so much of that you can show in like a 2-hour film. And so the angle that a series would need is justification for how many hours you're spending on the show, that you're spending on the series. And the way you justify that is with world building and character development. So it's going to be a bit of a struggle. It's gonna be tough for the diehards to embrace something like that. I feel like I don't know how accurate that is, Sean, but for the most part, I would say it's more about the suspense and the action and the thriller and the kills and the impact that the kills have, rather than it is about the depth of the writing. So if they're going to incorporate that, they've got to like strike the balance in order to like keep the diehards entertained but also engage with the new audience. That's how I see it.
Yeah, so the second this starts to feel like Halloween on the CW, I'm out. Like I don't need to see any, you know, with all due respect to those that love Halloween H2O, I don't need to see Halloween H2O parts 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 27. Um, I've had enough of the Halloween teen feel. They haven't been there in a long time. I don't want them to go back to there.
Mm-hmm.
And yet Ryan's point about having to be careful with the financials on this, or
Why did you mute yourself in the middle of your sentence, bud?
my cord hit the space bar button. Need a new mic stand. Where did I cut out? I have no idea.
Ryan's point about the financials.
Ryan's point about the financials are pretty, accurate, because look, you need to be careful how much you spend here, because your ability to return that profit is not as black and white as it is with the box office. Keep in mind, though, the Exorcist comparison, if we were talking about a Halloween film rights deal, would be close, but make no mistake, Universal paid way more money to go get 3 Exorcist films than whatever this deal is. I think the thing to celebrate about this deal, though, is Miramax co-owned the film rights alongside Trancas. So if Miramax would have lost out on the TV rights, it's very possible Miramax and Trancas then would have got into a tussle over who got the movie rights, because they will lease it out or sell it out anyways to someone else that will come in and actually make the product. And same thing with the TV deal. Miramax is likely not going to be the ones to make the show. But that sort of dispels any chance of that happening. So I was happy to see that. For me, the picture perfect Halloween series, without getting too detailed, would be whoever's seen True Detective season 1, give me that. I'm not saying you need stars like McConaughey and Harrelson. That's highly unlikely. But give me people who can act, and give me that type of show spanned across several years, telling a Michael Myers story, where instead of it being like this, weird, I forget what it was in True Detective season 1 now. I think it was more than one person behind it now, if I recall right. But anyways, if you put Michael Myers strictly in the antagonist role, and you have likable, relatable protagonists that aren't played by Jamie Lee Curtis or anyone else we're used to seeing too much of, but new characters that we gravitate towards, whether they're survivors or authority figures, to me, then all of a sudden I'm intrigued, because Michael doesn't need to be on screen a lot. And you're dealing kind of with, like what Zach said, is Haddonfield as a whole, rather than spending 5 minutes with this one family in Haddonfield and expecting to feel anything for them whatsoever in a 2-hour movie. You might spend 3 hours in a 10-hour series with one family, getting to know the members of that family and feeling an attachment towards them.
Look what they did with The Last of Us. There was a whole sidebar episode that is going to get Nick Offerman an Emmy nomination, because you built that world. It didn't really have clickers. It didn't really have Joel or Ellie. It hardly touched on the main component of what the story is about, but it built out the world. I think if you're able to do that with a certain protagonist or a certain family, or a like the mayor of Haddonfield, and the political affiliations that come with the reputation that Michael Myers has in the town, you do an episode on that, and that gives you depth, it gives you world building, it gives you character development, and I would be completely on board with seeing something like that, as long as you've got, like you said, decent actors who can present that story in a way that is engaging, but also still feels in the vein of what the franchise is supposed to be about.
Yeah, and just absolutely, that's how it would have to work. The ethos of the entire world would have to grow, and being able to build side stories, as you said, about certain families or the city, or how they cope with, just building themselves up and recovering from situations, or even getting even more backstory and learning about these characters in a more in-depth way, and being able to grow with them is would be a big priority to make a show like this work. But because you're not going to get those instant reactions or shocks that you do in a film. You absolutely have to build up those relationships. You have to build up, my reason for caring for them. So when a situation arises where maybe their time is over, it
Yep.
really packs a punch. So
Yep.
there's definitely a lot to it that they would have to invest, and it's not an easy thing. You'd have to have good producers and directors to create that outside of, as you said, some decent. You don't need world beater actors, but you definitely need more than just the 10 cent actor off the can that just screams and squeals. You have to make it feel something.
Yep.
I think of like I'm just winging this here, but like a I don't know, the wife of an authority figure, of a investigator that's been on the Myers case for a few years, and we're seeing this character go through various things alongside the character we're actually following, the authority figure, and then all of a sudden the wife ends up dying one Halloween, on episode 4 or 5 of a 10 episode series, and you've spent a lot of time with those characters. Like, you're going to feel that more than random dickhead kid that you've spent 4 minutes with in a film, and and they just get killed. And there's a strong chance that that might be the type of stuff you get in a series. I'm just saying, for it to really work, for it to have emotional gravitas to it, and honestly quality, because I'm so sick of hearing quantity with TV shows. Give me quality over quantity any day. I think you need something like that.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't Loki season 2 only getting 6 episodes instead of 8?
I have no idea. Didn't only season 1 have 6?
I thought pretty much all of Disney Plus stuff had been hovering around 8 episodes. Very little has been doing 6. But
I knew Kenobi did 6. I don't know about Loki season 1. I don't know. I haven't seen any of Loki season 2 yet. So
I haven't either. But there are certain instances where you're not even getting 10 episodes. And so, with something like Kenobi or Loki or even Game of Thrones, House of the Dragons talking about doing 8 episodes this season instead of 10. So I don't think 10 is really even in like a guarantee for this show, for this franchise. I think we would be lucky for each series to have in the ballpark of 6 to 8. And I think that's kind of the sweet spot where you spend a couple of episodes with somebody and then they die. Spend a couple of episodes and then they die. And you've got like maybe 1 or 2 recurring threads that like are interconnected with those people that you're following along with. But at the end of the day, the impact of their death needs to be felt, like you said, and it needs to come at the hands of Michael Myers. And so that's what the show would end up eventually pointing back to is, yeah, nobody is safe. You can fall in love with somebody, you can love this character, but nobody is safe. And I think if you're able to bring that idea across, if you're able to bring that essence across and do it in fewer than 10 episodes, then I think it'll be fine.
yeah, and the last thing I just want to hit on here quickly before we move on is don't rule out Season of the Witch. Season of the Witch has a story that can span across 6 to 8 episodes and it not have Michael at all. I just can't see Miramax being like, okay, yeah, let's go do this TV series and not use the most valuable asset, pardon me, which is Michael Myers. So let's move on here. We have some House of the Dragon season 2 news to get to, and in my opinion, it's a little spoilery, even though it's only an episode title. All right, fellas. So believe it or not, we are now actually quite a bit under a year from the debut of House of the Dragon season 2. We're looking at potentially August, more than likely. And so we're looking at about 10 months from now for the debut of House of the Dragon season 2. How are we feeling at the moment before we dive into this article, which is, again, if you know anything at all about the backstory of this series that is on right now, it's going to be a bit of a spoiler. But Um, how are we feeling about just having to wait multiple years in between TV seasons? I understand that it takes time, but I got to tell you, I the whole having to wait 2 years for a new season of TV for something that I'm watching, it just does not work for me. Like I'll be excited when it's here, but it's what entirely too long. Zach, where do you stand with having to wait multiple years for a new season of TV?
I'm gonna say this as a friend, but I'm also gonna say it to call out your bullshit. Because if you want stuff year after year, you're gonna get CW quality, and you just went on the record saying that's not what you want from your franchises. If you want something that's good, it's gonna take time.
Um, I agree with that to some extent, but I would point at Game of Thrones seasons 1 through 6 and go, they were able to turn it around year after year.
That's an aberration, and it was pre-COVID.
Yeah, but it's not like these guys got shut down by a strike. You know, they're not.
Look
They're
at
not.
look at Sherlock, for crying out loud. You got like 2 or 3 episodes in a season every 4 or 5 years. Like that's the other end of the extreme, but then the other end of the pendulum is what you're talking about with Game of Thrones pumping it out year after year. But I mean, I just talked about Loki season 2. It came out in like 2021. Season 1 did, and now we're getting season 2. Like that's kind of the norm these days, unless you're talking about a CW type program.
I just want to inject here with using your Loki example. Obviously, who you have is your actors are crucial in any sort of timing situation. But Tom Hiddleston, I can never remember his last name. He is one of the mega A-list actors in Hollywood, and getting his time and schedule is a lot more difficult than getting the actors to do a show like Game of Thrones. Now, admittedly, there are some big named actors in this series as well, but that is a crap excuse if you ask me. There's no reason you can't produce quality work year over year. And yes, COVID is a factor. Now we've had a writer's strike here in the States that's shut down things for the last several months. Those are all key aspects to these sorts of situations. But the best years of Game of Thrones were years where they were producing 10 episodes a year, 10 episodes a season every season. I just can't buy that you need 2 years in between series, because it ruins the flow. It ruins interest. And it bothers me that there's that much of a gap.
I guess I'm just a little more used to it. Like pretty much every show that I've watched, I didn't watch Game of Thrones during its original run, so it wasn't something that I was very accustomed to. And pretty much everything else that I've watched has taken around 2 years. And I just see it as an opportunity to get caught up on all my other programming, because there's a shit ton of stuff out there. And I can always do a rewatch if I need to. And it's usually quality enough content that I can binge through 6, 8, 10 episodes in a week or two to reacquaint myself with the storylines and the characters, and do a little bit of reading online or what have you. And it doesn't take up a whole lot of my time to reacclimate myself to it. And so I'll just repeat that I think Game of Thrones is just one example of being able to pump stuff out year by year. And then you've got the other end of the spectrum with something like Sherlock that takes years to get just a few episodes from. And somewhere in the middle is where normal television is. Game of Thrones has one standard, there's other shows that have other standards, and then there's stuff in the middle. And I would say 90% of that stuff in the middle will take anywhere from 18 to 24 months.
I guess I'll put it, my last thought on this with this. If you're going to make me wait 2 years, then I want 10 episodes. The fact that the Game of Thrones, the last couple of years of Game of Thrones, and now we've seen it with House of Dragons, the longer they stretch these out, the fewer episodes we're getting. And if you're going to, if you're going to try to produce this high quality content, and they certainly do, then I want to maximize that content. And I don't really have an excuse for them to say, oh, we're only going to give you 8. I want 10.
That's fair. I can get on board with that. If the wait is that long, then make it worth my wait. I can agree to that for sure.
Yeah, their excuse for season 2 was they didn't want to stretch the story out further than they had to, and for them to get to the next big event would have required more than 2 episodes to, like, so theoretically, one big event would have ended on episode 8 of season 2, and then they would have had to be at the next big event to properly end the season, by episode 10, and that just wasn't gonna happen. That was their excuse they used. Obviously, there's some financial flexibility that they get by only doing 8 episodes as well. Um, I do think nowadays Zach is right. A lot of TV is waiting multiple years to come out with a single season of TV. But I just don't think a lot of them require it. Um, like I sit there and look at Mando season 3, which I think took them more than 2 years to get to. And I go, wow, yeah, half of this looks like complete fucking shit. What are we doing here? What did I wait for? And like, that's the other thing is, it's not just episode count. Like, if you're giving me 8 1-hour episodes, which is exactly what House of the Dragon season 2 will be, that's a lot different than getting 8 episodes that might equal 4.5 hours of storytelling. There's a big difference between 4.5 to 5 hours of storytelling and 8. Things get a chance to breathe, things get a chance to grow. We just talked about it while talking with Halloween. Having more chances to spend with characters, to get to know them, to create those feelings towards them, so that when they do something amazing or get killed off, there's some sort of emotional response to it. I guess with House of the Dragon, I just sit here and go, they didn't even get a renewal until after the first episode aired, which is a little behind when Game of Thrones would get theirs. Game of Thrones at times were getting multiple renewals at once. And they've basically said, hey, we're ready to start work on season 3. We got contracts in place and everything, but it hasn't been officially renewed. So until that happens, the work's not going to begin, which means you're probably in for another wait. And I do think Ryan's point about scheduling does become an issue on any project you're working on. Whoever has priority rights on whatever deal they're on can change a lot. For Mando season 3, a lot of the infrastructure of that season changed the second Pedro Pascal signed on to a priority deal with HBO to do The Last of Us. So there was a lot of stuff behind that. I don't know. Part of me is impatient. Part of me is also just not great health. But the other side is, if I have to choose between waiting an extra year and it's being done right over getting a watered down CW version of Game of Thrones, I'm going to wait the extra year.
I think for me, and I wholeheartedly agree with you, Mando season 3, and I love the Mando season 1, 2, and 3, but I understand where people come from with the faults. But what made it palatable, and now this has actually harmed Disney over the course of the long run, is we had content in between that to kind of keep us filled, right? I think the fact that there is this gap between season 1 and season 2 and no Game of Thrones material to fill that gap in between it is big part of my problem. Is that I crave it, and I do want the quality, and I would rather have the quantity over the quantity, absolutely. But I feel like there needs to be a little bit of tease in there. There needs to be something to whet the appetite to keep me really firmly invested and wanting to continue that wait and continue more. So I think that's just where it is for Game of Thrones, and obviously they have a very tight schedule. But at the end of the day, they also are working on these other series as well that have been delayed and delayed and delayed. And and this is the greedy side of me that says, well, I want House of Dragon and I want the next one as well. So for me, the more I can get, the better. But it does have to obviously pay off with quality.
Zach, is that big enough for you to read, man?
Yeah, I believe so.
You want to give that a shot? Give my tongue a break here.
Yeah, I'll give it a shot. This is what article is this from?
Winter is coming.
This is from Winter is Coming. Okay, I thought that was just some catchphrase you were putting up there. The first season of House of the Dragon ended with Lucerys Valerian, the son of Queen Rhaenyra, getting killed by his cousin Aemon Targaryen. In the book Fire and Blood by George R. R. Martin, this turns an already tense situation into an all-out war. The Dance of the Dragons is about to begin. Now, Redanian intelligence claims to have learned the title of the Season 2 premiere episode, and it suggests dark times ahead. The House of the Dragon Season 2 premiere is reportedly titled A Son for a Son. That's as far as I can get. Can you scroll me, or is that it?
No, that's I don't want to scroll any further before we spoil too much book stuff for people.
There you go.
But yeah, now you'll notice it's a month ago, but Talking Thrones, who's a big time Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon YouTuber, usually gets a lot of the stuff first in the Game of Thrones universe, basically came out and confirmed this today. So, yeah, what does that title mean to you, Zach? I know you know some of the lore, but it sounds like they're not going to waste any time getting right into where we left off.
I mean, I feel like there's no alternative. Based on how the season ended, this is the next logical step. This is where the story is supposed to go. And if they tried to draw it out, then it would be a waste of 1 or 2 episodes. Like, if this is going to be 8 episodes, they need to hit the ground running. And so I know from the lore that there was a message that was sent that basically said a son for a son. And so it's basically picking up where the story left off. And I think that's great. I think a story like this yields itself to having no time gaps. There were a lot of time jumps in season 1 as we saw Rhaenyra grow up. But now that she is grown, now that she is claiming her spot as Queen of the Seven Kingdoms, this is the natural progression. You've got to follow everything in sequence now so that you can watch the entire Dance of Dragons unfold. And so for this to be the next piece in the puzzle makes sense to me, and I'm pretty excited because I do know some of the lore. I do know what that message means. I do know what this title means. I don't think we're going into that spoilery territory for this video, but I feel like it makes sense, and I'm excited for it.
Ryan, you take anything from this title? I know you're not somebody that dives headfirst into the spoilers, but if you remember how House of the Dragon season 2 ended, or season 1 ended, pardon me, it probably gives you a hint at what's to come.
Yeah, absolutely, and this is absolutely, what you say is true, that I'm not super familiar with the lore, so I really don't know what's coming next, and I'm actually very happy about that. But at the end of the day, that is a dead giveaway of what's about to happen, and obviously, as somebody that felt a lot of pain with how season 1 ended, that also excites me about where season 2 is going. So it definitely sets the stage, I would say, and once the deed is done, so to speak, the all-out war is going to follow, and that's where we really turn to next. So I'm super excited about that.
I have no doubt that I'll touch briefly on what Zach was alluding to without going completely into it. I have no doubt that if that is the first episode, much like the first episode of House of the Dragon, where there's a lot of talk online about certain events that happened in the basically the death of Viserys's spouse in childbirth. That was a very, I don't want to say hot button topic, but a lot of people were surprised they were as graphic as they were in that first episode.
I know at least one person that it turned them off to the series. They saw that scene and they quit watching.
I know one person who almost did. So do you, actually. So, yeah, no, it's a sensitive issue, speaking from experience, it's a sensitive issue. So
if people were that sensitive about that scene, they're going to be a hell of a lot more sensitive and a hell of a lot more triggered by what's going to come in this first episode of season 2.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be one of those events where people go, "What the fuck?" And as far as I know, in terms of what was filmed, it's very, very hands-on. It's nothing loosely alluded to. So,
are you sure that's the phrase you want? It's very
It's too late.
it's
Or,
very hands on. Oh man.
but yeah, so there you have it. House of the Dragon, season 2, episode 1. The reported title, A Son for a Son. And as Zach said, it would really start things off with a bang, and they start running, and we get right into our little 8-episode sprint for season 2.
And it'll all be on this Legacy of Westeros channel that we've got here on Fandom Empire. Every episode will be reviewed in its entirety, in its greatest depth, by the at least 2 or probably all 3 of the guys that you're seeing here on this channel, on this video. So there's something for you to look forward to also.
I will tell you this, as I said, as the guy that doesn't know what's coming, you're going to want my reactions, right? Because I got a feeling my what the fuck is going to be pretty out of this world.
See, I wish we had this channel back when I was going through my first run of Game of Thrones, because I did not know that the Red Wedding was coming. And my whole night was just, what the fuck? What the fuck? I felt like that parrot that was trained to cuss in a movie, and then they had to give it up for adoption because pet stores couldn't keep it around because it was cussing in front of kids. Have you heard about that? They, like, I don't know what movie it was, but like they trained it to say what the fuck for the movie. And then they could
yes, Meet the Fockers. No, the blonde. Yes, I know
one
which
of
one you're
those.
talking about, though. Yes.
Yeah. And then they couldn't return it to the pet store because they would just have it on one of those trees and it would be cussing at kids as they walk by. So it had to get like specially adopted by somebody who didn't mind it cussing at them.
Before we get ready to wrap things up, I want to bring something up. And I had my brother actually suggested this to me, and I just wanted to bend your guys' ear on it a little bit. What if, okay, so take everything in the Star Wars TV series, mostly everything anyways, that happens in the Disney series that happens post Return of the Jedi. So you have Book of Boba Fett, you were supposed to have Rangers of the New Republic, Mando, Ahsoka, we got Skeleton Crew coming. And he goes, don't you think the show would have been a lot more successful and a lot more appealing if it just had like one title, like Threads of Destiny, and all these intersecting stories were just in one show, like Game of Thrones was in the early seasons? And so you spend time with the Mandalorians, and you spend time with the Jedi, and you spend time with the Imperials, and you still get all the stories that we've gotten in their short, compacted versions of themselves, I guess. But it would be more fleshed out. What would you guys think about them doing that? I would be for it, but I also know Disney's cheap pricks who love to bend the system and bend the rules and rip off their writers and their actors, and that's the whole reason you got Book of Boba Fett.
Well, my personal feeling is I'm okay with the way they're doing it. I think, it's clear, right, that the worlds are intersecting. There's no doubt that the worlds are intersecting. I think a great example of what they could do is something intellectual property they own. Look over at the Marvel universe with the Avengers, right? Like the Avengers was a conglomeration of all of the movies, Iron Man, Captain America, in their own little spheres coming together into a actually combined sphere. I think that would be something I would be super excited about, by taking the individual spheres that we have with the current Star Wars universe and combining it into a much bigger overarching storyline with one big baddie that they end up all fighting, maybe not together, but in some capacity working together to achieve a goal.
Yeah, I think Ahsoka kind of lended itself to that possibility, as well as the final couple episodes of the Book of Boba Fett. It's pretty obvious that Dave Filoni's movie is going to be an Avengers style film that brings the Mandalorian characters, the Ahsoka characters, the Skeleton Crew characters. Once we get introduced to them, I feel like that's very, very obviously the direction that they're heading. But I think I would be interested in seeing some sort of a combination miniseries maybe on Disney Plus, where You take all of those separate adventures that are happening and allow the paths to cross in like a 4-episode miniseries or something on Disney Plus, and then you go into Filoni's 2-hour movie after that, so that you have that groundwork laid and you can take your time with it, and then you can dive into the actual story of fighting the bad guy instead of having to combine, like cross over the streams and then have your fight. That would take up too much of the movie's time, I feel like. So maybe they do something kind of like the Defenders from the Netflix series, maybe not a carbon copy of that, but like you take the Luke Cage, you take the Jessica Jones, you take the Daredevil, and you put them, together into a mini series where they're all working together. Do something similar, a condensed version of that on Disney Plus first, and then do the movie. I think I'd be on board for that, but I do see it heading to an Avengers style combination. But I think keeping it the way that it is, and then maybe doing the occasional crossover to lead up to something bigger, is the best way to do it, at least at this point in time. If they try to switch gears now, I don't think it would work.
Oh no, you can't do it now. I agree. It would have had to been done from the start, in my opinion. I like your idea too on the little 4-episode crossover or whatever. I just think that a lot of these stories haven't had time to breathe, and that comes from having 28-minute long episodes at times. So I hope that regardless of how much we all want a Star Wars movie, that they take their time to be able to develop the characters longer. Ahsoka's definitely going to need another season before a movie. I just think if he could go back in time and tell all these stories at once, Game of Thrones style, quality of the show probably would have been a lot better. But then again, it probably would have been a lot more expensive too. So we'll have to wait and see what comes from that. Fellas, last question I have for you guys tonight, and I've seen it talk online about this the last couple weeks or so, is apparently Disney's going back to the drawing board again with Pirates of the Caribbean. They made 2 attempts without Johnny Depp and never even got past the writing stages. So I pose the question to the two of you, and I'll start with Zach. Can Pirates of the Caribbean work without Johnny Depp, or is this a fence that needs mending?
This is probably going to be my shortest and easiest answer of the night. No. It does not work without Johnny Depp. It simply does not. The franchise is it's married to him, essentially. When people think pirates, they think of Captain Jack Sparrow. And to have them try to think of anything otherwise, at least in a feature-length cinematic style, is folly. I think you might be able to do a mini-series about life in Port Royal. You might be able to do a mini-series about life in Tortuga. But I don't think you can do a movie franchise centered around a different pirate. Everybody has just equated pirates to Captain Jack Sparrow, and recasting Captain Jack would be a disservice to Johnny Depp and the fan base that he has built there. So I don't see it happening successfully without him in the mix.
Ryan, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much agree with Zach wholeheartedly. Listen, we've seen a lot of television shows, a lot of movies lose a main character, and it just doesn't have the same feel, the same impact. You just, the audience is so captivated by what they know, what they're comfortable with. I just can't see any sort of Pirates film succeeding without Jack Sparrow, and there's absolutely no way you can recast him. So they need to either mend the fence, or just retire the franchise.
Yeah, well, I mean, as I told a bunch of Halloween fans for months now, too much money in IPs to just shelve the franchise. But there's really no reason to not bring him back now. But at the same time, he might not be all that interested in coming back unless there's a number that helps those wounds heal. So,
Big fat check with a lot of zeros.
And to be clear, I'm not saying you can't make a new movie where he is, maybe the story surrounds him, but he's only in the last act of the movie. Not Luke Skywalker, very end of The Force Awakens type stuff, but like where he's a legitimate big part of the last act. I think you can make a Pirates movie like that and have it work if it's the right story. But if you have no involvement from him at all, your ship is going to sink. Anyways, though, that is going to do it for us on that fandom show. Apologies, it was a little bit impromptu. We'll be back tomorrow night, actually, with the Legacy of Star Wars. We got a relaunch of sorts happening there, and we're going to keep doing it weekly. And we're bringing back an old Wastelands favorite. Star Wars trivia is coming back in a much more organized way, where there's going to be a trivia wheel involved. So we're going to try to get a bunch of different guests on for that. Not tomorrow, but as time goes. So be on the lookout for that. We're going to be talking the Mortis arc tomorrow. And then that fandom show is also going, and a lot of other things happening at the channel. Zach, what do you got going on, man?
Mostly sports. If it's not on this channel, then I'm doing play-by-play broadcasting for a local football team here in the area. And you can follow me at Zach the Voice for those updates. I'll be tweeting about the Rangers. I'll be tweeting about the Stars, local Texas teams also. So you can, just keep up with my random musings over there. But mostly it's play-by-play. Trying to do that professionally, so I just got to keep pumping out that type of content. So that'll be going on for probably the next month or so. And then I'll be trying to apply for jobs to do that full-time. So we'll see how that goes.
Exciting stuff, man. Exciting stuff. Ryan, before we get to you, sponsors, big shout out to them. One of them is Ryan, Colleague Nation, Storytime Spectacular. Big thanks to Jesse and what he allows us to do, and Jason Nike over at Backtrack Cinema, who I think I saw today that he's doing the top moments in the Halloween franchise over at Backtrack Cinema. So be sure to check that out. Ryan, how about you, man? What do you got going on? Where can everybody find you at?
Yeah, man. So as you just showed, you can find me over at Colleague Nation, our NASCAR-centric Colleague racing podcast that we like to do for fun and agony at times. Most recent episode, we were pretty sad about the state of affairs of the franchise and Colleague racing, but check us out over there, get our takes and how we're feeling about that. You can find me over on Facebook and Twitter as well with Colleague Nation, just trying to make our community bigger, better. We love racing. I really, really love NASCAR. And, it just, to me, being able to talk racing with anybody that wants to come chat can reach out to me at Yount Racing 45 on Twitter or at Colleague Nation on Twitter. So check us out over there.
Also check out our other channel, The Legacy of Halloween, The Legacy of Westeros, and The Legacy of Star Wars. The Legacy of Halloween one is new. We just put another video up today. The rights deal announced. What's next? Check it out, The Legacy of Halloween on YouTube. But for Zach and Ryan and everybody else at Fandom Empire, I'm Sean. Have a great end to your Monday night.